Guys, very nice to have all of you. Very nice to have Coach Ryan Johnson, who is the Director of Strength and Conditioning and also the Director of Operations for the football program at Wayzata High School and Wayzata Public Schools. And he is also the State Director for the state of Minnesota. Coach, very nice to have you here. Very nice to have you on. It's a pleasure. I see that we might have you show the backdrop to everybody that you've got going on there. Coach is out at a camp right now. And he's taken out of some coaching opportunities to be with us. So we really appreciate it, Coach.
Yeah, I'm on campus here at South Dakota State University in Brookings, South Dakota, and they're building a new stadium. And I had a little issue with the Wi-Fi in the dorms, and the coaches were nice enough to let me crash their office. So here I am, king of the castle. They're all out coaching at the camp, and I'm here with you.
Hey, that's all right. And we'll Coach has got a big night planned, so we're going to have to get him out of here after an hour. But Coach has been very gracious of his time, and he's willing to be with us all night. I know that's the case, and we're not going to hold you, but we appreciate you being willing to open up to us and answer some of our questions.
Absolutely. I'm really excited about the opportunity. Really, really happy to do it.
Excellent. Coach, I'll start with my questions. We usually just open up kind of with some common questions that come from a lot of coaches regularly. Some of the first 4 or 5 roundtables that we've had, these were the questions that have come up. And then after we get through these 5, we'll go ahead and open up the floor. And coaches that are watching and viewing, you can go ahead and send questions in now. That's not going to affect us. We're just going to talk about these first few. If you have something that you really want to ask regarding a particular question, for instance, this question is going to be about the demographic makeup of Wayzata. If you have a question in particular about that, feel free to call in. And if we can get you in and we can get your face on screen and we can have some face-to-face talk, that would be awesome. So, Coach, first question, what's the demographic makeup of Wayzata? What does your average 9th grader look like coming in? Maybe what is that athlete? I know you've had some very successful athletes go onward. What do they look like when they graduate? What are some of their experiences, their social setting, home life? What does that student population look like for Wayzata?
Well, Wayzata is the biggest school district in Minnesota. So we are the largest high school in the state. Our demographics is we are a suburb of Minneapolis. It's located in the high school is located in the city of Plymouth. It's a very well-to-do district. It's the student parking lot is way nicer than the high school lot. I'll tell you that right now. It definitely is. So the demographic, the majority of the school is white. It's a very well-to-do area. We do have now within the last 10 years, I've been at Wayzata 15 years. Within the last 10 years, our population and demographics have changed really for the better. We've had some different programs. There's some programs in Minnesota called The Choice is Yours, where they allowed students that were traditionally in the Minneapolis public school system to be able to be bused out to other suburbs. And so we're starting to see a much more diverse population at Wayzata High School. We have, the majority of the school is going to be from fairly well-to-do homes. We also have a very high percentage of people that are there simply for academics. It's a very high-end academic school as well. So we've got a lot of people that open enroll. Open enroll is closed right now. People can't, come to the Wayzata High School outside the district. And a lot of them that have open enrolled, they're not doing it for athletics. They're coming for the academics. And so very high-end school with in terms of academics and those things. So I hope that kind of paints a little bit of a picture.
Absolutely. Excellent. The state of Florida is going in that direction. I think we're going in the direction of students can ultimately choose whatever public school they want to as long as enrollment is open. Is that the case in Minnesota, or is there just particular schools that allow that option?
Well, an open enrollment has to be available. So in other words, you have to have enough room in the inn. There has to be enough seats in the building. Whereas that's why our high school is adding on right now. We had to close open enrollment. We've been under a 2-year construction process to get it in. Some of our neighboring school districts are advertising. You hear ads on the radio and on TV to get people to open enroll there because their building is not full. Wow. So kids can go. Now there is restrictions though for athletics. So wherever a kid goes in 9th grade, that's where their eligibility is. Gotcha. And you have to be at a school for 1 calendar year in order to be eligible for athletics. provided that you're not there as a freshman. So
Okay.
if a sophomore transfers, he's got to sit 1 year for varsity.
Sure.
Same as a junior.
Yeah, because that was my main question and main concern regarding that. Myself being at a private school, it's different, but we're still very heavily impacted. And I have a big interest in public school sports in South Florida. It's a concern of kind of that open recruitment season and just going over and being able to pick kids from towns and say,
Right.
okay, well, you have to get a ride, but a coach will come pick you up. So hopefully we go in that direction as well. And there's some guidelines to follow. But that's pretty cool, Coach. As far as programming considerations, maybe just a quick rundown of how you came to where you are programming wise, what a typical day program looks like, what an athlete goes through on an annual basis. It doesn't mean audio regulation, or are you power lifting the athletes? Are you Olympic lifting the athletes? And then beyond that, do you have a competitive team in weightlifting?
Well, I'll answer the last one first. We do not have a competitive team in weightlifting. Okay. Not because I don't wish to or don't want to. It's more of an issue of I coach a lot in terms of the athletes, but I'm also a football coach, heavily involved in that. For as big of a school we are, I have a couple of assistants, and they're barely paid. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the reason for us not having that team right now is we just don't have the coaching that it needs to be able to do that, nor the space in the room, because we are so packed in a pretty condensed field. Not to say that I wouldn't like to at some point in time. Maybe now with this new weight room that we're building, I might be able to add that in there. But first of all, from a programming standpoint, our kids are we combine powerlifting and weightlifting, I guess. Clean, squat, bench, variations of all three are our main priorities, okay. And as well as presses and jerks. We encourage all of our athletes, believe it or not, it's a huge school. We want our kids to be multi-sport athletes. So the majority of my kids that I'm training are at least involved in one sport, if not two. Sure. And so I do get some kids that come in after school just to train. I do have a number of kids that come in and take the classes just to train. I get more kids that are lifting just to lift via my classes than I do after school training. It does get to be very athletic driven and crowded after school.
Gotcha.
And we're always evolving, always changing, but we're going to stick to those three main lifts. And I'm always looking for new stuff, but our main focus in the weight room for me on a day-to-day basis is to use strength and conditioning as a means to, benefit our athletic programs. We want to create better sports teams, stronger teams, keep them free from injury as best we can. But that's kind of the goal. When you walk in the Wayzata weight room, it's very athletic driven. It's got a very athlete sport feel to it with a lot of sport coaches and a lot of athletes in that room.
Sure. I want to touch on Coach Vanderbush's question just because it relates to what you were just talking about. Can you describe your new weight room and explain where that financing is coming from?
Well, we're getting a new weight room, and that's because I basically, hey, I'll admit it, I threw a fit. They added a huge bond. The taxpayers went out and voted on it, and the original plans did not include a weight room with the original principal we had. We got a new principal. I walked in and I said, I can't believe that this is what we're going to do. We've got all these athletes, a building this big. So it was a fight. It was a real fight to even get some of the square footage turned around and to get that weight room. We are building this weight room. It's 5,000 square feet. The room that we have right now is 3,500. That room is going to stay in the spirit of lifting in a strength facility. During the day, it's going to be more of a group fitness room, but it will be available after school as well as an auxiliary room. So I'm getting the room, but I didn't get an equipment budget. So I've been working the last couple of years through this process to gather dollars in hopes of being able to purchase new equipment for the most part to put into that room. Sure. So that's how we got it.
Awesome. Do you follow a specific screening protocol? What's your protocol as far as monitoring movement, Coach?
Well, we've always been mobility driven in the fact that we wanted to train movements as opposed to lifts. Mm-hmm. We've always done that. Just within the last couple of years and via the NSCA, I've gotten to know Mike Bewley. And we've really done a lot of work with his dynamic warm-up movement assessment. And that has become, I'm still evolving, I'm still learning with that, but that was a godsend to me because it was a way for me to work with kids. I deal with a lot of kids at one time, much like Kevin Vanderbush does. And, the FMS is great in a clinical setting. And if you've got smaller classes and maybe some staff members, but for me, the FMS wasn't the best fit for where I was at. Right. But I can do this dynamic warm-up movement assessment in a gym and spread them out. I'm warming them up, and we get the kids to, we've got some sheets printed out. The kids are following it, a little bit of peer checklists and things like that. So that's where my latest has been, is with that.
Excellent. Coach, somewhat related, do you have an ATC on campus, an athletic trainer?
After school, yes. So after school, we have our school day ends. The trainer comes in about 30 minutes before the school day ends to prepare for the athletic stuff after school. During the day, I'm it, for better or worse, even though I'm not certified ATC, so I'm the go-to person in the building during the day for that stuff. Gotcha.
Excellent. Now, Coach, you talked a little bit about your school days. Can you touch upon and explain what your summer looks like and the lineup of summer, what athletes you're seeing, maybe what are they doing this week now that you're off campus? How did they close this week out? What does the summer look like?
Well, we go to school pretty late. Actually, this was we had students in the building through last Thursday. Friday was teacher workshop. And then this week is when most of our teams are doing their team camps. The football had their camp this week. The basketball team is going to start theirs next week. We use it kind of as an unloading week in between. And a lot of kids are taking a quick family vacation. They're doing a lot of those things, decompressing from graduation. They got older siblings. So that this week, we always take this week in between off. Now on Monday is when we're going to really start the program, the summer program, and then we'll get going. My group or my goal for training programs is I'm always going to train the largest group of athletes at any given time first in the morning. And so our summer program, it starts out every day with football. We bring the football kids in first. They're the largest group of athletes on campus. The next group that comes in is basketball, followed by a combination of our it's boys and girls basketball. Then is our volleyball, softball, track, tennis group, because there's not as many in volume as them, and wrestling. So we take that largest group of teams and work our way down. And then in the afternoon is our middle school sessions. Gotcha. I've got another building that runs our middle school sessions right away in the morning as well. And that's so because, parents have got kids signed up for everything. Yep. I mean, they got to squeeze us in between swimming and tennis lessons and maybe a golf match or something too. So there's a lot of that.
Sure. And that kind of leads into my next question. What does the average kid's summer look like? Because here, for instance, it's hard to pull baseball kids because they're away in the Panhandle competing in some tournament or showcase every weekend. Really, it's extended 3-4 day weekends that they're gone. That sometimes it's hard to get those kids in. Do you have that happen a lot at Wayzata?
We do, and here in Minnesota, we are the state of hockey, so kids are always playing hockey. That is our biggest sport, I think, in terms of where our state tournament is pretty widely known, and that is probably the most viewed upon popular sport, even though we have way more kids playing football in the state of Minnesota than hockey. But in regards to what you're talking about, that more resembles our basketball programs. Baseball is a big sport here. In fact, Wayzata is playing in the state tournament right now, and those kids go on to play Legion baseball. So they tend to stick around and play. Our baseball players stick around. They have games pretty much every other night. But our basketball team, our boys basketball team in particular, they're getting in planes or cars Thursday night, Friday morning, and they're traveling to Vegas, Fargo, Sioux Falls, Iowa. It's our basketball kids that are taking off and going to those tournaments. But we keep them. Our summer program, we run Monday through Thursday, where Fridays are off. It seems like everybody in the state of Minnesota has a cabin, or at least knows someone that has a cabin or a boat. And our summers, we cherish those because it's pretty cold and pretty nasty the rest of the year, to be honest with you. So we go Monday through Thursday, and we know kids are taking off. That also helps our kids that are going to some individual football camps, sure, that are on the weekends. So, but yeah, we get them though. Our basketball's been very good. They come in, they work hard. We've been able to educate them up on the importance of everything. And so we've getting them in, but it's more of a travel for the weekend, come back just destroyed on Monday from playing 14, 15 games over the weekend.
Absolutely. Sticking with the topic of your athletes and your kids, Ed Smith from Lynchburg College wants to know if you see an air of entitlement, or if sometimes it's tough to work with some of the kids at Wayzata, knowing we don't want to draw any lines or connect any dots, but oftentimes if you're in well or off areas, maybe entitlement kind of covers it like a cloud. And do you sense that at Wayzata, or do you have that any issues as far as that goes?
Well, yeah, we do. And I remember having this conversation with our athletic director one of my first couple of years there. And we were talking about it, and it was just so happened to be that particular week they renovated my office, which was a glorified closet. And they actually had someone come in and they put in a desk and a nice chair. And all my other PE buddies, phy ed teachers, are giving me crap because I had a fancy chair. It had a back on it. And he said, and I was kind of mentioning some of this entitlement and some of this, and he said, well, you have to understand, you don't get that kind of a chair without some of these problems. In other words, we have some great facilities. We have some great things going on, and we have to brace for and be ready to handle some of that. And that's coming from the parents. It's not coming from the kids. Very rarely have I dealt with a sense of entitlement with a kid. It does happen. I'm not going to lie. I think we all have that. But it's not to the point where it's over the top bad. It's something that's there. You have to be ready for it. And what I've found is it's not so much as a group of parents. It's one or two parents every 3 or 4 years that can be the most difficult to deal with. So, there's always going to be a couple of things here or there. But yes, to kind of wrap it up and answer it, yeah, there is a sense of entitlement in some regards. Sure. It's there. But it's one of those occupational hazards in the community that I'm in. And there's more than enough great kids that are willing to do anything that you say and just absolutely love everything about it. So, that is there. But we did have to really work on a blue-collar mentality when I got to the high school, along with another good buddy of mine, a football coach. We had to install what we call the blue-collar attitude. And we had to tell them what a blue-collar attitude meant. They didn't even know what it was. We bought white T-shirts with blue collars and told them, so that doesn't show the sweat and the dirt from the hard work. We had to teach them what a blue collar mentality was. But I think we've got that in there now. And like I said, the handful over the years is far outweighed by the kids that have just been phenomenal to work with, and the parents as well.
Absolutely. You mentioned that Minnesota, this is coming from Liz Gasper, that hockey is one of the bigger sports in Minnesota, maybe the biggest, or at least the most influential. Does that reflect in your training, or maybe some of your professional development through the years? Do you have a sport that you like to, or maybe that you reflect most favorably, or focus most on, or work the most with?
Yeah. I work with, in terms of volume, it's football. But I got a great relationship with all of our sports. Our basketball, we have a new basketball coach. He's doing a great job. We absolutely love working with him. Our football coach has turned everything over and just says, you're doing a great job. Keep doing it. Hockey is a different breed altogether. It really, really, really is. And I do work with hockey players, but I work with individuals on the team. I don't get the whole boys hockey team at Wayzata. I get a lot of them that sign up for my classes, and I work with them throughout the year. Part of that is probably because our head hockey coach works at a separate training facility that's called Acceleration Minnesota. And so the kids are all going there. It's a dry land training program for hockey players is what it is. It started out as it's a private place where kids can go. Our head coach works there. He does a very good job with his kids, so they have a kind of a sense or a feeling that they need to go there because he's running a lot of ththings. And they do a lot of great things. That tends to focus a little bit more on the skating aspect of it and power. They have, I'm sure people have seen it, but they have treadmills that these kids skate on. They hook them up to a harness to hang on, and they skate on a treadmill going uphill and working on things like that. So when I get the kids during the year, that's when they want to focus on strength. And we also bring up mobility and work with that. Yeah. So to answer that question, I don't get the hockey team as a team. But, for example, this year I had 6 varsity kids train with me pretty much the whole year in my classes over the course of the school year, and had 5 of them in class on the state tournament run, which was a blast. That was a lot of fun.
Awesome. What about your female participation?
Our female participation is very good in our spring sports. Our softball gals and the track gals do a really good job. They're in there. Our girls basketball does too. I think the last couple of years we've just been a really young team, and education is everything, and we're still really impressing upon our younger athletes the importance of strength and conditioning. Again, now we're back to the demographics. We are a district where a lot of people have a disposable income, and they think that they should go out and hire a personal trainer, a shooting coach, as well as a whatever deal. And so, there is that mentality that if you're paying for it, it's got to be better than if it's for free. So we do have quite a bit of that too.
Yeah, sounds familiar. I think this is coming from Coach Brokaw. Do you have any assistants over the summer, and what's their level of involvement?
We have quite a few summer assistants. We have a great deal. They range from former Wayzata athletes that are now in college, all the way through, everybody in the building. I employ all of our sport coaches. So our head basketball coach is an assistant coach. A couple of our assistant football coaches are assistant coaches. I've got a couple of our Phi Ed teachers are assistant coaches, men, women, former players. I'm trying to think. That we just had a couple of new hires in the district, and these 2 or 3 guys all have former lifting experience. So I've got a more experienced summer staff now than I ever had in terms of people that are in the building as far as teachers, because it's easier in the summer for me to go out and hire other strength coaches and get some interns and get some other people that want to come in and work with us and train with us. But so they range from former Wayzata kids. I make them wait 1 year. You can't graduate and then 3 days later turn around and try to coach, some people or be around people. We need some space and time on that. So, some of our former great lifters, those are the ones that get to come back and work, and everybody knows that they're in there because they're like just great technicians and awesome and, get to help out. So, and it depends on the number of athletes I get as far as the staff members we've got, but I think I've got about 20 people working with us this summer. I got to find out on Monday. Sometimes I forget who I told yes to, and I could have a big staff on Monday when I get back.
Hey, that's all right. Coach Joe wants to know, how do you compensate your assistants if you do?
We pay where all of us are hourly in the summer. So we run all of our training stuff and our camps through the high school, run it through the athletic office, and then we pay out. And what I do is, the teachers, because it is run through the school, they get paid benefits as well. So we follow the curriculum writing scale. There's a curriculum writing scale, which is summer work, and we follow that scale and, right on down. And we take the curriculum writing scale, and then we go right down to our paraprofessional scale, and that takes us down based on experience. So the young kids coming out of college, they'll make $10, $12 an hour, and then it'll work its way on out to $20 an hour. And then there's like steps and lanes that if you've been working in the district for more than 5 years, then there's a 10% increase. So we follow everything that's on in the master contract of the building in terms of teachers and paraprofessionals and specialists. So that's the scale that we follow.
Cool. Getting back to the athletes, Ed Smith again wants to know, do you have milestones that the athletes must meet, whether it be progressions or regressions with exercise selection?
Well, in education, Gary Schofield and I have talked a lot about this, and Gary's mentioned this too. Differentiation is everything, and that's going to be, getting to the core of that student. What can they do? And so we kind of have a progression of exercises in our program that we'll do, and we do this as far as this is our goal, and this is what I tell kids when they take our classes. And I mirror our summer training very closely to our classes because we are a program, and a lot of our our sessions are geared within the football session. There's block 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, just like when kids come into my weight room. So we're going to differentiate the exercises. By the end of the term, you will all be able to perform a hang clean, a power clean. The higher levels of classes, will vary that. So we have a goal for them by the end of the term. And then we do have certain criterias that everybody's going to have to do, like front squat's one. That's a main goal of everything that we're going to do. You will be able to perform that front squat. Same goes for cleans. We love the clean, and that's something that we want everyone to be proficient. That's another great, buzzword in education as well, for effectiveness. But we want our kids to be proficient because I think that brings in some mobilities and, stability type things as well as, we just don't want it to be lifts. You're not going to lift, we want people to hold, understand technique, proficiency of these things. So I have expectations for my kids, but I also take into consideration, the kids themselves, multi-sport athletes. They've got an injury. They're coming off something from one sport going into the next. So we do have like a 4-year goal for our kids. And if they stick with us, they're all going to be able to knock out, they should be able to show us a full squat clean by the time that they're, a varsity level athlete, things like that.
Is there strong adherence to those transfer rules? Like, do you often get a transfer that's going to be a junior or going to be a senior in your program, or do you usually see the block 0 athletes are going to be your rising 9th graders?
We don't get a whole lot of transfers. We've had a couple over the years. We had a kid come up from Louisiana that was unbelievable. He was a beast, and that was fun. That was a lot of fun. More often than not, the majority of our transfers are very behind in strength and conditioning. We've had a couple over the years where kids either transferred or moved in. That we get more move-ins in the corporate world. People are getting moved to the Minneapolis, St. Paul area. They go on and they investigate. They look at things and they'll see that Plymouth, Wayzata High School. So we will get, I guess we get a little bit of everything, but we haven't got a great ton of great athletes and great lifters. In my experience in the last 15 years, the majority of kids that we've gotten that moved in have been really far behind in their strength and conditioning compared to what we're doing and what we're lucky enough to be able to provide. So we do have to kind of start them off, at a lower level. And boy, they work hard to get up there with our varsity athletes. They learn really quick, because they want to train with their peers and they want to, compete in that weight room against those gals and guys, just as much.
Sure. How often do your athletes train? How many times will you see an athlete throughout a week?
Well, I hope to see them minimum of 2, in season, minimum of 2. I'll take 1 if it is in season, and that's what we're going to get. But we kind of run everything. I'm available 5 days a week for these kids because, for example, some of these, if they're a spring sport athlete and they got nothing else going on in the fall, so I'll see kids anywhere from 5 to 2 days a week based on how they can get in. Sometimes during the year they can get into my classes, so then I'll see them every single day. But the one thing I always tell our kids and our athletes and our coaches is, think of me as in the weight room as the world's greatest buffet table. Come in here and get as much as you can, or take as little as you want. We're here, and this is what I think is the best. But it's about arranging and scheduling with these coaches to see what we can do.
I like that a lot. What does a typical training session look like? Let's say best case scenario in season athlete, best case scenario out of season athlete.
So best case scenario in season athlete will be, I'll take our track team as an example. They're gonna do their running workout first. They're gonna get warmed up. They're gonna get their running workout in first. They're gonna come in, and we're gonna have 1 day of strength a week, and then we're gonna have 1 day of explosive strength a week. And that typically would be, we'll bring them in. I think we bring them in on a Monday. We brought our distance in on Monday mornings for their strength workout. Sprinters came in on Tuesday after practice. And then Saturday is kind of our explosive day strength with the bands and doing some of those things. That's a good example of our in-season. Basketball, it's a little bit harder to get them in a morning after a game. They do travel a little bit further. but we'll get them in more so after practice the next day. So the in-season athlete, we're going to get them probably about 50-50, depends on, like once a week we'll get them in the morning and once a week we'll get them afterwards. Some of the bigger sports, football, in season, they're coming in. We'll bring the freshmen in one day, sophomores the next day. The varsity tends to lift before school or during my classes. So I'm like an air traffic controller. We've got this runway and we've got kids, and I'm just, okay, we can get these guys in the morning. We can get this group in on Wednesday with a late start day. We'll get these guys in after school. And I say it all the time. I took that plan test in high school when I was a sophomore, and the number one thing that came back was air traffic controller. And I laughed at that, thought that was a big joke for years. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, I'm teaching, and now my sophomores are taking the plan test. And, hey, I got an air traffic controller. I said, you're going to run a weight room. You're going to run a weight room or do something like this. Absolutely. So we've got teams coming in at all different times of the day. It's really when it fits that coach's schedule is what that is.
Excellent. Coach Smith, I'll get to that next question. I want to go to Coach Vanderbush's question because I think it just relates on what we're talking about a little bit more. What percentage of your athletes take your class? Can they take it every semester? How many are in those classes? And is that a traditional or block schedule that y'all have?
Wonderful. Block schedule. So I teach 3 blocks out of 4 over the course of the day. So each class period is a block, which is 90 minutes long. So we teach 3, and then I have a prep period over the lunch hour. And I always get my prep over the lunch hour because some athletes will come in and train over their lunch and then quick eat and then head back to class. So in my classes, I have a strength 1 class, an intro level. I have a strength 2, which is at intermediate. And then I have a strength 3, which we call peak performance. Each one of our classes can be repeated. So they could take 1, 2, and 3. And, once they take a 1, they don't have to, they could go to peak performance. You could take peak and then come back to a 2. So I have the 3 classes available, but I let kids come back and repeat it at any point in time because we do differentiate our workouts. And I run more than 1 workout in a block in a class period. So kids can take them up to a total of 6 times. I would say half of my classes are athletes over the course of the day. Half of my classes are athletes. Typical size of a class is about 36. So I'll get a good mix of half and half. We do get a fair amount of kids that come in and train before school. I kind of mentioned that we are a pretty high-end academic school. We're very academic demographic, so the parents are really pushing kids. I get a lot of kids that are trying to get into Boston, get into Denver. There's a lot of kids that are trying to get in and, or just be the highest ranked kid in the class, and they don't have time to take the classes during the day. So that's when I hope to get them in over that lunch hour or before school, getting them in there. Did I forget one in there? Was there another part of that?
How many in your classes take every semester? Traditional block? No, I think that covers it. Next couple questions relate pretty well as far as communication goes. First, let's go potentially with communication with your athletic trainer that you mentioned will come in after school. What sort of role do you play maybe in the weight room? And this is coming from, I believe, Kyle. Kyle, sorry, I don't know your last name. Kyle wants to know what your role is if an athlete's going through a rehab protocol, whether it be with that athletic trainer or be with a physical therapist, what your role might be in the weight room if you see them in there.
Well, we have a great chain of command. The surgeon is the head coach, physical therapist, and our athletic trainer are the assistants, and I'm the position coach to kind of break that all down. So whatever the surgeon says in a rehab situation, they're gonna do that. I'm a part of that team of that return to play care. I let our athletic trainer is really good, and we'll go back and forth on what can we do with this athlete. Again, when they're with their PT, they're in charge now, and we're going to let them do their things. And we want to follow that chain of command. And once they get back to us in a surgical setting, then we'll work together on that. Now, if it's just an injury, bump and a bruise, kid will go to the trainer. He'll diagnose it to what he thinks, and then that'll come back to me, and then we'll follow the rehab stuff from there. So, I'm not going to go to the trainer and say, hey, I think he sprained his AC joint. This is what I would do. But I do have a little bit of a background in that, so that I do understand how to work within that system. And we're lucky. We have a couple of really good athletic trainers, and they'll come back and say, hey, it's a shoulder. We'll use our, whatever protocol and work on them to get that back, or it's a groin, it's a hip. So it's really good. And that's when he comes in a little bit before school gets out. That's usually when I have a little bit of a break before we start training. I can touch base with him and just say, where are we at with, this athlete or this kid, and
sure.
Anything you need from me. And, so we work together pretty well.
Sure. As far as onward athletes, do you have communication with college strength coaches about any athletes in particular? What does it look like when they're in your weight room and they're a graduating senior, maybe a football player that finished in the fall and now has been committed or assigned to their school? When they get their program back, are they just kind of having at it and running their program? Is there any communication with the college coach?
We're very fortunate at Wayzata. Most of our athletes that go on in college tend to compete within our region, in our mid, the area within the Dakotas, Iowa, Wisconsin, and in the schools in Minnesota. We have a very good working relationship. We're very fortunate enough that a lot of the local smaller colleges will say, just run your stuff, follow RJ's workouts, you'll be ready to go. Some of the kids that are coming from a little bit further out, and the coaches maybe don't know a little bit about, what we're able to do with athletes. Then I'll have a little bit more interaction with those strength coaches. Even still though, our in-state kids, they do get packets and they do get workouts, and terminology tends to be a little bit different for some of these kids. So I'll email a coach and say, what are you going, what are your thoughts on this one? You're calling it this. And then we'll just kind of bounce back and forth. But so I do talk to them, and whenever I do talk to them, I do talk to a lot of the strength coaches from, hey, what can I do to incorporate? What are you guys doing? Eric Kramer up at North Dakota State, he's doing a lot of great stuff on mobility. So I'm kind of contacting him on the front end, and I contact a lot of the strength coaches on the front end just to pick their brains and get more ideas and exercises. So a lot of the local places already know what we do, and we'll go back and forth on that. So we work really well with them. The kids can do their packets, they can do their workouts, but that's more of that. I have that class that's called peak performance. We always structure that first block of the day early in the morning so that our athletes can recover by afterwards. And that tends to be a very senior athletic class where up to half of my kids in that peak performance class could be working on a college workout. And so we'll incorporate that and put them in the right setting. I just don't want them coming in after school and doing certain exercises that we haven't incorporated in our program, whether it be for space. We got a lot of modeling. Sometimes younger kids think, hey, that's great. He's going to college. I better do what he's doing because he's going to college. They don't understand that you have to build up to some of these exercises and things like that. So,
what about in welcoming alumni back? Are you able to welcome them back? Is there limitations from the school? Maybe some of your own personal. Do you like to have alumni back in the weight room? Is there a specific time you like to set out for them?
Yeah, alumni, that's a touchy subject. During the school day, if you're not a student, you're not allowed in the building, and they don't want you coming in at all. Now, when I get to a winter break situation where these kids are coming back, to work out over winter break, say they're a fall athlete or a spring athlete, we will let them back into the building. I'll let them sign in, and they can come in. I allow the alumni to come in and train during my prep time when I don't have any other athletes in there. Maybe a couple will be coming in from the lunch crew. So that's one time, and it has to be prearranged. Because to me, if I'm sitting in my office and an athlete, a former athlete of ours is in college, he's home on break, he wants to come in and train because, he can't go to the Lifetime Fitness down the street because they don't have, racks and rigs that need stuff. I want to be there for kids. After school, we don't allow them in because we're too crowded. We just don't have the space for them. They can come in after 4:30 and then train because, on a different schedule. But we don't allow a whole lot of commingling of the former athletes as well as the athletes. Not that I don't want them in there. I think a lot of leadership it comes out of a weight room. And I think a lot of times you have some really strong leaders, and these kids come back from college and train. It interferes a little bit with our training. Our kids are going to kind of look to them. They don't work on their own leadership skills, and we just don't want things to be a distraction. I tell them to them like, hey, just because you're playing football in college, we wouldn't have you come back and practice football with us. I love it that you're here. but we'd kind of like to train a little bit separate from everybody else.
Absolutely. That makes complete sense. Coach Joe wants to know, and hopefully I don't twist this question in the wrong way. You have some athletes that come in one or 2 days a week. You have some athletes that might be in there 4 days a week, maybe 5. Is there like not more important, but mandatory core lifts that the athletes have to hit, and then those other couple days are kind of extra accessory ancillary lifts, or what does that look like from, in comparison to those two athletes?
Whatever they're going to do, there has to be balance. So we want to make sure that, if they're only going to come in 1 day a week, and communication, I say balance in terms of the exercises, the communication is a big thing. So for example, if it's, a kid that's stressed or in a lot of competitions, they're banged up, we'll back them off. That kind of gets into a little bit of some auto regulation, but we're going to back kids off and say, okay, let's just come in. I only want you in 2 days next week, and we're going to do this, this, and this on those 2 days. So it's the same for kids that are only in there 2 days a week, as far as that kids are in there, 4 or 5 days a week. We have a set program, 3 or 4 different workouts going on at any given time, and the kids know what they are doing. But then if they're coming in, now for the kids, we're not a buffet. You're not coming in and taking what you want. I tell that to our coaches, but for the kids, it's like, you got to get your meat and potatoes. Let's make sure we're getting this stuff in on Monday, and then we'll get this in on Thursday. So yeah, we got to have a lot of good communication. And the way we list and post our workouts, they're able to know, they need a day 1, a day 2, an auxiliary A, auxiliary B. What do you got here? We'll communicate and say where are we at on this one. So a lot of communication really solves that big time.
Excellent. Coach Liz wants to, going back to Coach Liz's question, how do you, if you implement corrective exercises or some other movement protocol while the large groups or while multiple groups are into their programming, how do you work that in?
Great question. And it's hard. I'll tell you right now, because it's in the summer and this is when I'm in. There's some times when we are great with corrective exercises. The summer is one of them, because I have a lot of staff members and I can get them I can get large number of kids in a gymnasium. I can use 2 gymnasiums, and I'll have a lot of coaches working with kids in much smaller groups. So we're really good with the corrective exercises in the summer. And then we're really pretty good with the corrective exercises in my classes, because once we get the kids into a class setting, I do have an area of the room that I can take smaller groups of kids in, and we'll do a dynamic warm-up fitness assessment before we get in the weight room. And then I'll have like some checklists, because on the stuff that Bewley does, if the athlete's having some issues here or if he's doing this, and I tell kids, write it down so you don't forget it. When we get back in the room, now you and I are going to work on this and we're going to take care of this. Where I'm really bad about the corrective exercises is after school, when our kids are we're crowded, we're slamming, I'm trying to get the groups through, we're working on some stuff. And that's the kid that if I have them in class, I'll say, we'll take care of it in class. If I don't have them in class, I'll say, you got to see me in the morning. Let's get in the morning. And there's been some kids that I'll say, we're done lifting after school until you come in and see me in the morning, and we can get you on this stuff so that you can work on this at home on the side and do this stuff. So, that's scheduling, like sometimes we're great and other times we're not. And I think as long as you understand that, know that, and pay attention to it, then you can work around that stuff.
Sure. Coach Smith was curious, and I think probably everybody was. How do you educate your coaches? How do you coach your coaches on what to expect from a movement perspective, or throughout the summer, whenever you have assistant coaches, on what to expect from them, from your athletes in the weight room?
Well, we got a great core of returning coaches. So they already know our protocols, they know our progressions, and they know what the main stuff is. So I can just tell them, I can send certain coaches here and there. When I get new coaches, I have them shadow me so they learn the terminology, learn our cues, learn our things like that. So when I get a couple of new coaches in, I have them shadow me. I also have them go down and watch our middle school coaches and our middle school programming a little bit as well, because I want them to know what kids learned on the front end and some of those movement-based patterns. And, I try to get them a view of the whole picture and work with them in that regard. We also have some roundtables. It's funny because I'll go to the national convention And they already know when I get back on Monday from NatCon, watch out. I'm so fired up. I am so energized. I got a whole new bag of tricks. And in fact, when I get back from NatCon, I have them come in at 6:15 just to debrief everything that I've gotten through and go over. But we'll do that. Our lunches are really fun. In our summer staff, they're a very active bunch, very strong bunch into strength. And we come up with exercises and I have them do stuff. And it's like a cultural thing. We're all talking about it. We're all bought into it, share some things, but we'll sit down in clinic on stuff. When I come back, they already know it's a big, early morning on that deal. And I'm showing them everything I learned and the things I want to implement, things I want to work on over the course of the week. So we'll have some great lunch sessions as well as some coffee club sessions too,
Sure.
to educate each other.
And Coach Smith also was curious if any of those coaches are certified.
For the first time, I've got 2 coaches coming in that are now certified because they'd gotten certified in places outside of Wayzata. And, I've encouraged people. I've had some other coaches that were certified that have moved on and gotten their own jobs. So right now, though, I do have 2 other coaches that are certified. So I'm really excited about that.
Excellent. Keeping with the same, Coach Smith, you should be doing the interview right now. What are the middle school athletes doing? In particular, he's asking body weight, kettlebell, barbell exercises. What does that look like for your middle school athletes?
We have 2 different tracks for middle school athletes. I mentioned that we have another site, at our West Middle School site. That middle school program is a little bit more. It's not a little bit more. That's more of a physical education, general prep academy. So the kids that are going there do a lot of body weight stuff. They do a lot of games, a lot of running, a lot of gaming outside. They do learn the basic movement patterns. We use the really light bars, and the kids are going to learn the movement patterns. And they learn what a squat is, not so much a front squat, a back squat, or a goblet squat, but it might just be outside on the field in the middle of a soccer game. Okay, we're going to get into a squat position. And they learn ready position. Okay, that's our basic athletic stance, which also down the road, when they hang onto a bar, it's a hang clean, get in your ready position. So they all know chest, knees, toes, head up, and things like that. We run so we call that session Trojan Power Readiness, basically getting them ready for our Trojan Power program. Then we also run a middle school session at the high school where these kids are going to go through, and in the way we have it labeled and described is it's a more athletic middle school Trojan Power as opposed to Trojan Power Readiness. So on this one, they come in and they're grabbing bars on the first day, and we're taking them through our lifting progressions and they're light bars as far as what a front squat is, what a power pull is. We're going to get those kids doing the movement patterns with implements a little bit more so than the readiness program goes. But, some kids, you look at it from 6th grade to 8th grade, those body types are very, very different. Some kids are very athletic in terms of what they can handle and what they can comprehend. I do tell the parents that, they ask me what the difference is between our West Middle School and our Central Middle School and the athletic and the readiness. And I said, well, how is your kid in sports? Is he or she able to be coached? Do they listen to coaches? Can they handle coaches? How are they at their youth sports and practices? If they're a little bit more squirrely and just want to kind of run and play, then the readiness program is probably a little bit more aligned for them. But if they're really into coaching and really into sport, then they can handle the repetitive nature of going back and over and working on the techniques on stuff.
That's awesome. Very informative. Thank you, Coach. Back to Coach Torres has a question as far as your communication with parents. It's a good segue into this question. And how do you educate them with what you're doing with their children at the middle school and high school?
We, a couple of different ways. There's a parent newsletter that goes out. It goes out a couple times a year, and I try to rotate brief snippets, articles. It goes out to every school at the same time, but the high school newsletter goes to the high school people. I try to rotate around. These go out like once a month, just, little snippets, or I share articles, share things I picked up with the NSCA, and just try to always promote what we're doing. And so that's always it's called the Wayzata Communicator. So we always get articles in there. So I try to get one out on a little bit of a rotation, something to the elementaries, and then something to the middles, and then something to the high school. Twitter, we created a Trojan Power Twitter account, and that's really just getting going. I'm trying to get that going a little bit more. So, but that's also how we try to, one, information, weight room's closed today because of whatever. Sign up for Trojan Power. So we're out there. We're like the NSCA. We got the Facebook page going now, and I got a Twitter account going for our program, and I try to get the information out in those communicators. And my emails everywhere. I've given out my cell phone number way too many times, so because I get calls from parents all the time, and that's okay. I want to be there for folks and stuff, but and then email, a lot of email things in that. And then I do also go to we have a fall sports meeting, a winter sports meeting, and a spring sports meeting, and I make myself available. Every year we do it, and it's usually kind of the same meeting. Everyone kind of knows what's going on, and if nothing else, I'm there by this point just to introduce myself. If you ever need anything, here's my email. These are the types of things that we'll be doing with in-season athletes. These are what we're doing without, out of the season. So I do that. We also have a fall sports coach meeting or a coaches meeting in the fall. So all coaches in the district have to attend this meeting in the fall, and I always go to that again just to kind of introduce them because there's always going to be coaching turnover, and I make myself available to the coaches as well and tell them if you have any questions, see me, or if any of your parents have questions, now at least you got a face to the name that you can refer parents to as well.
Sure. Coach, at this point, I'm going to cut off the questions from everybody else, and I'm just going to leave you with this last kind of more so of a 3-part question than 3 questions, just to close it out. It's about the future of the high school level, the profession, the careers that might be created or positions that might be created, how we can play our part in that. What can the members of this roundtable do moving forward? I think most everybody through the roundtable, because we promote it through the Facebook page, that's probably how they've heard about it. Maybe if there's something that we can do through that Facebook page or elsewhere. And then maybe for the, 10 year, 15 years, next 15 years, what the future is for you. If you could just touch on those 3 pieces, I would greatly appreciate it. Those are questions from me that I'm really curious of your take on.
Well, I coached out of the old weight room for 15 years. And I figure if I can put 15 more in the new weight room, that'll be a pretty darn good career at Wayzata High. I plan to stay at Wayzata. I plan to stay in the high school realm. I really enjoy, for better or worse, being around the high school element all the time. My wife probably has a lot of other thoughts on that because she says I'm eternally 18, and I probably am. As far as careers go, it's so fascinating when you think about it that, there are going to be jobs available for all kids by the end of their college that they won't even be in college for. Things are evolving and turning around so greatly. I do, and I'm encouraging my son who's a senior. I think nutrition is really, really, really going to be implemented into, and not that it isn't already, but I think we're going to see a great increase in the nutritional element of strength and conditioning. I think that is already there, and I think there's going to be a lot more of that. I think there's going to be, we have life coaches. I think that's going to be a big thing. Strength, conditioning, mobility, stability. As a population, we're living longer. Special Pops is going to be a definite a part of it. And, we're learning so much now about, how important muscle mass is in terms of preventing diabetes. I think people are going to, in the youth sports thing, we don't have 2 hours for me to rant about what's wrong with youth sports right now in terms of what they're doing with kids. I think that's going to be considered a special population pretty soon because we're almost going to have to counteract some of the damage that's being done daily with these kids, and so I think that we're going to see a huge expansion of our field to include all these different special populations and incorporate, maybe, a strength and conditioning guy. We're probably going to have to be way more knowledgeable in nutrition than we've ever had because the public is so much more educated, and they're also so much more driven because they want their kids to get scholarships and they want everything. So, I think we're going to get a lot more finite in some things. The future of the high school level, you look at our facilities that we've already got classes during the day that kids can train in and get credit for. I think we're going to continue to see that. I hope that we see more certified coaches in our high schools. That's something that we've all been talking about. I'd love to see more certified coaches. more from a recognition standpoint for what we do. I think we're going to see facilities go nuts, more and more places. I mean, I'm sitting here looking at a $108 million complex right here, and the weight room is unbelievable here at SDSU as well. So there is that great trickle-down effect. Colleges have figured it out that kids don't want to go there if they don't have great facilities. I think high school is going to have to probably start jumping on board with that, just because it's such a more you got to give the public what they want. And if people really want to get involved in this and train and have it a part of the high schools and then down the chains as well, I think we're growing. I really do. I think we're growing as a profession big time.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for that, Coach. And thank you. I don't think I can express enough how great this just about an hour has been. I think we had discussed, I think are you still good for time if I kind of shut this recording off and you hang around?
We're good because Coach Jackson is not in his office. He's out on the football field and I'm in here, so we're great, He's
not kicking you out yet.
Yeah.
Well, Coach, again, I know I can't speak enough for everybody that was viewing and for myself how grateful we are that you would be willing to share and set this time aside for us. It's tremendously important to me. I know it's tremendously important to all of the coaches that are watching right now, and I say on behalf of them, thank you.
Hey, thank you. And I've told you, what you're doing here is fantastic. You're driven, and I love it. And this is continuing on. And I want to, kudos to you, man. This is fantastic. I really appreciate your work.
Means a lot. So, Coach, thank you for that. What I'm going to do, I'm going to pause this recording so we can kind of just get even more off the radar, and we'll talk a little bit.
Okay. Thanks.